The other thing that I find really important that I find a lot of people just don't do is they don't take just enough time for their company or their personal life to really imagine your future, right? If you don't know where you're going 24 months from now, if you don't have any idea, you probably won't get there. And so really, part of strategy and part of, I just call them business playbooks because I really am a big believer in having a playbook 2 years out, is that, you really got to, disrupt the present, imagine your future, and put it in a package that you can execute against. So,
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Ayushi at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform, which is also the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM. That's specifically built and crafted for employee experience and the future of work. We at peopleHum run the peopleHum blog and channel that received more than 2 lakh visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have today with us Neil Edwards, who is the managing partner at Actin 360. Neil holds an expertise in helping organizations with growth, turnaround, and restructuring opportunities. His critical skills include setting strategy, financial planning, technology innovation, which is AI, automation, and data analytics, cash flow management, negotiating smart deals, and organizational change. Aside from this, Neil is a regular contributor to Forbes, covering the digital and innovation trends impacting CFOs and finance leaders. He has a 25-year track record in the US, EU, China, and Africa, and has held C-suite leadership, including P&L and management consulting roles in finance, government, media, tech, IT, telecom, and investment banking sectors. His results have attracted invitations to run initiatives from top organizations, including Google, Microsoft, T-Mobile, Samsung, Visa, and Vodafone. With that, I'd like to welcome Neil on behalf of peopleHum. We are pleased to have you.
thank you very much. It's a pleasure, and thank you for that warm introduction.
My pleasure. So Neil, moving on with the first question, I would like to ask you that you had a fantastic track record of 25 years. So could you tell us something more about how did your interest develop in technological innovation, organizational change, and all its nuances?
Yeah, so my background was I was a math major in college and in a computer science minor. And my first job out of college was working in a nuclear weapons research lab where we used technology to do everything, because technology was very key. And it was at a very young age I was exposed to probably some technologies that were 10 or 15 years ahead of their time, back in the early 1990s. And I just have always been on that track ever since. And technology, always involves a vision around the problem you're trying to solve, and then the technology itself, and then the people and what you do with it. So it was really in kind of at the start of my career, I've always been involved with, businesses that innovate, and that's it.
That's a wonderful answer, Neil, and I can totally relate to you staying in United States. The technology has always been developing, and we look forward to getting new technology from Silicon Valley, from America, and we always like to inculcate all the new technology in our lives at all times, may it be even the smallest detail or the tiniest aspect. As you see, the new technology of LinkedIn has come up with the LinkedIn stories, the way Instagram had come up with that, and I think all the companies and all the influencers and everybody have so adapted to that technology that they've made it vast.
Right.
That's true. Okay, so moving forward to the other question, Neil. So you have mentioned that you help companies with turnaround and restructuring opportunities, and I'm very sure that must be very challenging to do. So how do you go about crafting personalized models for every business, because each one is unique?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point you bring up, that, every business is actually unique. Even though some businesses offer very similar things, people buy for a number of reasons, right? They buy for price, they buy for service, they buy for features of product, they buy for a lot of different needs. And so whenever I am, usually called, whether I've been running a business or whether I've been called in with my team to help a business with growth or with turnaround, it always involves a couple of factors, right? One, looking at the goals they're trying to reach, and then number two, balancing those goals against the resource that the company has. Some people have very unrealistic goals about what they can achieve, and they're not willing to. And when you push a team too far against unrealistic goals, they never hit even half of them, and then people are left very defeated, and then companies are left underperforming. So I'm always, when I look at how you either turn around a company in crisis or trying to help a company with explosive growth, maybe internationally, it always goes back to one, what are you trying to achieve? Who are your customers you're targeting? And then, what are the tools you can do that with? That involves people, that involves technologies like AI, that involves, things like partnerships, how do you leverage other organizations to help you go faster? And so you really have to have a vision about how you have to have an intellectual curiosity and questioning nature, balanced against the pragmatism of what you're trying to achieve with the resources you have. You can't spend more money than you don't have. So that's kind of something I found to be very helpful, being very focused
That's a
on
wonderful
goals.
answer. And yeah, I totally agree to you. The expectations of the company should not be unrealistic, because then that puts a lot of work pressure on the employees, and it might just break the entire organization if the goals are not realistic. And yeah, as you spoke about AI being, integrated and innovated in a company, I think you might be knowing the company IKEA has innovated the AI module for their website in a very, very innovative manner. So as soon as you turn your phone to an empty space, you can just slide and you can see how a particular sofa, a particular bed can look in your living room or in your bedroom or anywhere. So that's the really realistic goal which they have set up, and they have accomplished that in a very beautiful manner.
Yeah, the augmented reality that they did. I mean, I actually did a little research on that for story, and you're actually right. I mean, they made especially with COVID, if you think about it, the customer experience with COVID is going to more and more touchless on a number of fronts, right? My personal phone, me to the device that I do business with, to just not even having to interact with some places that are high risk. So, anything like augmented reality in any of those technologies, touchless payment, those things are very important. And so, yeah, they make a difference. And I think what I find, to be key in any of these situations are, there's so much technology out there. It's not about the technology. It's really about making sure that the team who is implementing or looking at how they make changes are current. So there's a lot of people who just, quite frankly, aren't that current, you know. And this is one of the big, gaps that we have today, right? We have one of the biggest talent gaps in the history of the world right now, because digital transformation, got put on steroids with COVID. Projects that were supposed to be, 2 to 5 years out now have to be delivered today, right? And there were not enough people, 6 months ago to deliver. Now they have to deliver everything. And by the way, budgets are being cut. So you have all these interesting transformational or foundational factors that are happening to companies, and not only companies, but institutions like government around the world, who don't have a choice. I mean, they have to be online, they have to be contactless, they have to invite technologies like augmented reality. And for a moment, just forget AI. AI may not be the most important technology, it may be one, but it's really about how do we virtualize a lot of the paper-based things that we were still living with. And that's a hard thing to do for people, and it's not just about AI. So I find asking the hard questions and being current super important in companies. And when I look at teams, do they have the talent? It's hard to get, and it's hard to find because there's a talent race.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So, as I belong to peopleHum, and when we even talk to certain companies for their HR management, and we ask them if they've been doing it manually or digitalization, and they always say that nowadays, because of COVID, we need a lot of digital activity on our platforms, and that's when we say that peopleHum really offers you everything digitalized from your hire to your retire module. And that is one thing which we've inculcated because of the COVID times, because manual work, a lot of mining and metal companies have these face recognition devices because they have to check the temperature of the people who are coming, so that because of one person, everybody is not affected. So all these digitalization, technology and everything which has come up has, I think, worked out really well during the COVID times. But yeah, it's taking time to shift from paper to paperless, but I think people are catching with that really well.
Yeah, I think COVID if you take the long view of, 2 years, COVID will be a blip on our radar screen.
Yeah.
It's very important now because it impacted a lot of people, but it's not unlike a lot of financial crises that have hit the world, in 2008 and in 2000, and then in some of the periods of war and terror in the US, in the world. So I think, this is just a natural step in what's happening anyway. And it was an accelerant because it's the first time that a lot of countries and travel was really materially shut down. And so, I think what you're seeing is a faster deployment and a reprioritization of things that make a difference rather than the nice to haves. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
That's amazing. So moving forward to the next question. So you say that shifting gears towards technology and technological advancements have already accelerated over the past few years, and now especially due to the pandemic. So while AI and automation over the past few years and now have almost every aspect of organizational change, so do you think that penetrations would change, or there still exist a set of them and they don't believe in adopting new age tech, or are they still resistant?
Yeah, I think, again, it really depends on the company, right? So first of all, you have to divide the world into small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses, and, enterprises, right? Global enterprises with, 10,000 or more people, because the range of budget and affordability is completely different across all of those. One thing in common is that most companies today use some type of off-the-shelf software as a service to run their business, whether it's their accounting, their enterprise resource management systems, their customer relationship management systems, whatever it is, they use those. Most of those packages have built into them some form of machine learning that at the simplest level, which recognizes patterns or trends in their data, and then recommends shortcuts on doing different types of activities. For an Excel, it could recommend for you, for example, a new report format, right? In PowerPoint, it could recommend for you, a new design. Maybe you should try to present your data this way a little better. Inside of Salesforce, for example, it recommends for you, new funnels that you may look at or new segments of your customers. So for a lot of people, the heavy lifting of AI is being done already on the smaller things. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. A lot of people use, off the shelf SaaS products today already. It's on the enterprise level, there is a lot of investment inside, with AI and with automation. And I think it's going to vary depending upon the type of application. I mean, you see a ton of investment, for example, in intelligent automation, which, quite frankly, isn't a lot of AI. It's the automation of keystrokes. And then they have some simple machine learning built in to learn repetitive keystrokes and recommend new ways. But it's almost like getting rid of the last mile of paper, if you will, or the last, in the office. So, you see a lot of companies, and I did a couple of articles, for example, in Deutsche Bank and within Hewlett Packard Enterprise about their use of intelligent automation, to really change, like I think it was in HP Enterprise, they cut their sales to order quote from 4 or 5 days down to an hour, right? And that had to do with approval processes, and they put a layer of intelligent automation on front of that. Inside of Deutsche Bank, they did something similar, and if I remember the article correctly, where they were looking at know your customer and how to better track and automate, literally the thousands of documents that they have to do. So you see that in a lot of areas. Another area you see where people are really doubling down is how do they automate their customer experience so that they can do more with less people, right? So traditional businesses like insurance, who literally will have thousands of agents on the phone or on a chat client, health insurance, finance, everybody wants to know about their financials. And what you saw a lot of happening in COVID was you saw the deployment of natural language processing, where they were listening to the conversations that were happening at night during the day, and then the AI was listening and then pointing out trends among customers, and then management teams were able to quickly react with new policies, right? For example, longer payment terms, or they were able to divide customers into 2 or 3 different areas. So you see a lot of things like experience and data science coming together, and then also things like chat clients, taking on board, 50 to 70% of the inbound calls versus, a 1-800 phone number. So yeah, so you see that, and the obvious question is, what happens to all the people who are answering those phone calls, whether it's in the US or offshore in another country like India or the Philippines, and how do these systems become smarter and smarter and smarter, because quite frankly, they're not all that smart, and they actually need people to make them work. So you see 2 things happening, right? One, you see this tremendous need for skills, and I'm not talking programming skills, but people who are trained in automation and trained in natural language understanding, and chat clients who are not necessarily programmers, but smart, maybe smart administrative knowledge workers who know how to use this. That's one thing you see. The other thing you do see is you see positions, complete departments that will go away, right? You don't need to have 1,000 people doing risk management if 20 people can be the risk management administrator, managing bots, and making them better and training them. So you have this huge, fluidness of positions and companies that are changing.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And yeah, as you said, that there are a lot of companies which will obviously take time to go from attending manual calls and from doing everything manually to transferring to a digital platform. And that is one thing they always fear, is how their onboarding is going to be if they're shifting to a new platform. How are things going to be easy for them? Because there are many companies who I think take more than 1 month or 2 months to innovate a new platform, and it gets very difficult for them to manage all records, because they have to manage their clock ins, their clock outs, and the phone calls have to be all done digitalized. So that is one thing they really face an issue with.
Yeah. So I think, there's so many changes that are happening, right? And I think some of the biggest challenges you have, and this is a lot of times where I'm brought in, is that one, you now have a lot of companies in crisis, And quite frankly, you haven't had enough people who have in their careers gone through economic downturns. So, if you look at the management teams who are between 25 and call it 40, there's not a lot of talent there who have seen these types of catastrophic things happening. So one, there's a level of experience that let's call it the systems don't account for, because if you've never seen them. So if you've never seen them, how do you know to program for them, or how do you know to manage people through them? So I see an experience factor kicking in that people are looking for now. Not just how do I do something cool with tech, but like, how do I manage through this? Number two, you just mentioned it, some of the systems are not keeping up, right? And then number three, how do I prioritize them? Because not everything is prioritized equally or as important. And that's really where it comes back to having good leadership and good team players who know how to act on them.
Yes, that's absolutely true, and I totally agree to what you're saying. And yeah, like after what I said, it totally makes sense that it will take time, but I'm very sure many companies will be implementing this because of the pandemic. And yeah, we can move on to the next question. Building high performance teams is your forte. And so, what, according to you, are the indicators of such a team? And what do you need to watch out for, like, as a performance risk in your experience?
Yeah. So first of all, I always try to match the team with what the task is. Okay, because you don't always need the smartest teams to do some tasks, right? There are different teams built. Innovation requires different levels of intelligence and IQ. Some teams just need good hard workers who actually don't mind repetitive tasks, but they need to do them in a high quality way. So, one, it's always about looking at what's the job to be done, right? Not every tool fits the job. So that's number one. Number two, when I look at teams, I always look at first who the leadership is and how clear they are, because clear vision, usually reflects in clear understanding of what people should or shouldn't do. So I always look at the leadership. Second of all, I always look at the integrity of leadership. How is a manager willing to stand up for the people who work for them? Are they willing to work harder than them, work longer, defend them to the death, if you will, charge the hill with them? So I always look for that, because I think that's really important, because if you don't have those qualities, then, and quite frankly, also level of enthusiasm. If you don't have energy for the job that you're running, why should anybody else be excited about coming to work? And if you're going to lie to me as a manager, then, well, I may probably lie to you as an employee. So I find enthusiasm, integrity, passion, and just personal commitment to people and clarity of speech really important. I find those important qualities. When I look at team members and individual performers, again, I always look at teams as having, you have different types of people, and a team everybody does not have to be made equally. You might have one really good high performer, for example, but you might have a C-level performer who comes to work from 9 to 5 every day, and you know what? They do a great job. You give them a piece of work and they're going to do it. You don't have to worry about it getting done. It doesn't mean that they're not worse or better. It's just, it's just who they are. So, I really look for those types of qualities. And again, to me, integrity is really, really important. Clear communication and the ability to make mistakes, right? So can people make mistakes and not feel like they're going to get fired, So I find those to be really important qualities. What I also look for is I look for people who, I look for work ethic. If somebody's lazy, coming to work late, probably an indicator you're not going to be able to depend on them when it's a hard time. People taking responsibility, just kind of what's your personal brand worth, and when people are not on board with that, I tend to move them on very quickly. I hate to use the word fired, but I really think it's really important not to have toxic people in teams, or you're just asking for trouble.
Yes, that's totally right. And I totally agree with you. Work ethics is very important. If a person is passionate for the work, then the person should not be lazy or should not come late to the office, because that's when passion drops in. If the person is really hungry for work and really hungry for a job, I think he should put 100% in working and in doing all the tasks given to him appropriately. And yeah, one thing, he should not lie about anything. If there's something, it should be very transparent and very clear between the hierarchy and the personnel in the company. So I think the manager and the employee relationship should be really transparent, even if through the employee side or through the manager side as well.
I find the other thing that's really that a lot of people are missing is a lot the strength of diversity, and I don't just mean by race, but I mean by cultural diversity, because different cultures teach people how to look at things just a little differently. So, I lived in China for 3 years, for example, and my Chinese friends look at things somewhat very differently from an engineering perspective. My Indian friends do too, and so I always find that just different points of view, as long as you're aligned on what the goals are and you just have your personal integrity, diversity really makes a massive difference to, the outputs, because you usually get a more creative output, and not only trying to find the same type of people, like, right, I don't like to find the same type of people as me. I mean, I also think that some psychological testing, just to look at personality traits to understand strengths and weaknesses, because sometimes it's good to have a few introverts versus extroverts, right? If everybody's an extrovert, there's going to be a lot of talking, right? Maybe not a lot of working. So I find that those important things too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Diversity is really, really important. And I think one should always find, as you said, not the same people that you always belong with. You should find different people where you think you will not belong to, so that you know what they think and how they react. And you can also sometimes, take information from what they do, and they can learn from you as well. So that diversity really, really works.
Sure, exactly. So, I find that those are important things.
Yeah, that's amazing. So moving forward, lastly, I would like to leave you to any sound bites for our interviewers.
Yeah, I think it's really important to work with people who are willing to really not worry about disrupting the present, right? Because I think a lot of the problems that we have, and COVID pointed them out, was that um, the time for mediocrity is no more, and that those companies who are willing to disrupt what they do, like look at question everything what they do, the good things you keep, the bad things, get rid of them. It's not worth it. The other thing that I find really important that I find a lot of people just don't do is they don't take just enough time for their company or their persona's personal life to really imagine your future, right? If you don't know where you're going 24 months from now, if you don't have any idea, you probably won't get there. And so really, part of strategy and part of, I just call them business playbooks, because I really am a big believer in having a playbook 2 years out, is that you really got to disrupt the present, imagine your future, and put it in a package that you can execute against. So I kind of live by that, and that's what we do at Actum for companies every day.
Amazing. I think that's a wonderful soundbite and a wonderful mantra sort of thing, if I must say, which people should keep in mind always. Neil, it was very, very nice talking to you. And I really want to thank you big enough, not just for your insight, but also for taking your time with us today. And I personally view this conversation as a learning experience. And I'm sure it's going to be much more safe to say that everyone else will also do it. And
Good.
Neil, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure having you with us today.
Well, let me know how I can help you, and thanks so much. And I appreciate the honor of being on your program.
Thank you so much.